Everyone can have their emotions after a game, but here is why you should not overreact.
At the bounce, wants to take them on, runs to 50, runs inside, a sidestep, another bounce, has the shot. Oh, baby!
Welcome back to Further North, everybody. Chief is back. Now, you did send me a message a few days ago when I asked you to be on this pod saying you only come on after some bad losses. How are we feeling, mate?
Yeah, obviously not fantastic. I think it's one of those things where this fan base is probably going to get to the point where they go, we just don't want you on the pod anymore, because if you're going to be on the pod, it means we've lost the day before. So, or had a. I think I was on for a draw, so that's with the Brisbane. That's not too bad. You got to take that. So
That's
yeah,
right.
a bit disappointed. And I was supposed to be Joel the Mole, but I'm stepping in for Joel.
That's right. Shout out to Joel. Hopefully the wisdom teeth are going all right, mate. I don't think, even though, hey, the pod might have been way more entertaining if we got him on post-wisdom teeth surgery. So we'll see how we go. But look, let's get into it. And we're going to take a little bit of a different tactic into this one. Look, I don't think people are prepared to sit down and listen to us break down the game for over an hour. So our attempt here is going to be to try and keep it a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, sorry, and just chat about how the fans have reacted and maybe how I think we should be looking at this. And you know, we always have different opinions when Chief is on. I think that's a good thing that we'll try and go down. So look, we do lose to Hawthorn 150-65 down in Launceston. Deja vu from last year, which is, look, I was there last year. It was horrendous. It wasn't as bad of a loss as last year, but also an incredibly bad loss. So going into this game, Chief, what did you think we were going to dish up, and what did you want us to dish up? How are you feeling going into it?
Well, I was obviously overjoyed with the win that we had against Carlton. I think most people were, and I think it was actually one of my absolute favourite days ever at the footy. I think it's my favourite day of the footy for literally 20 years. I had such a good time, and my mood was buoyant for the entire week, and that's kind of how supporters approach these things. It's that their football team performance sets them up for the week, and I was in a great mood the entire week. And then I have a few Hawthorn supporters that I see quite regularly, and I think the thing that I was saying to them was, if we can get within 5 goals, I'll be pretty happy, because there's a few things about Hawthorn. Number one, you've alluded to it before, is that we don't match up very well against them for whatever reason. And hopefully that changes in the future and we can kind of be a bit more tactically flexible to address the things that they've got over us. But also it was kind of set up for them to do well. They always play well down at UTAS. They've got a lot of players coming back. They've got a very, very fit list at the moment. I mean, if you have a look at some of the players that they've got playing in their VFL at the moment, those players would walk into probably 10 AFL sides. So they're exceedingly healthy, and I think that was always going to be an issue for us going down there.
Yeah. I think that's a fair enough assessment of it, and obviously the VFL got a touch up as well. I think, you know, I said on the pod within the last week that I think there's a couple of games left for the year that we need to look at as potential smashings, and I know that we've turned a bit of a corner, and last week sort of it all came together like, wow, we really have got something. And I think the thing I want to stress is, like, I don't think we should be panicking after this result. I think I understand the emotional reactions last night on social media, but sometimes I hope that maybe us as a fan base are smart enough to understand it's more emotion than where it's at. I obviously put up a status and a story on Facebook and Instagram sort of saying, don't freak out about this. Just because we get a smashing here or there still doesn't mean the good work is undone. And it was very, very separate with what people thought about that. So, look, don't stress out and don't freak out. I think it's going to be fine. What sort of like tact are you sort of taking with this one just as a fan? Because for me, you know, Hawthorn and Geelong are the two teams for the rest of the year that I said last week, if we're going to get smashed in any games, they're the two that I think we're like you pointed out before, we're always a matchup nightmare against Hawthorn, and it's just not good down there when we go to play. And Geelong, I don't even know the last time we got within a couple goals of them, to be honest. So, look, that's how I feel, but what do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree. Look, I am as emotional as the next person when we lose. I
Yep.
am. I get frustrated. I get angry. I get disappointed, and immediate reaction is one that's very emotional. I think maybe this is an emotional maturity thing with people generally, is that they just take a back seat for it, let the emotions simmer for a little bit, and come and attack it and attack the subject the next day, like we do the podcast. Josh, we don't do the podcast on the same day for this very reason, is because it's going to be too emotive, and it's very hard to be objective about the whole scene, the whole result. And I think people immediately take to social media 5 minutes after the game when they're really emotional about certain things that have happened. And in the cold light of day, I think a lot of people will reflect on that and say to themselves, well, yeah, I just said that out of emotion, not because that's really the case. And I think that happens with results like this. I had the same thing with the Carlton game earlier in the year, the Bad Friday. I was so angry and disappointed with the team that I just thought, that's it. Like, I'm not going to watch football anymore. And obviously that's not going to be the case, right? I'm always going to go watch football. So my point is that I think that's the big issue, and I think people need to take a bit of a back step. And look, I understand it's there. They can post on social media whatever they want. That's their It's a free country. But also, you've got to understand that people will have different views to you, and you've got to look at things objectively rather than subjectively in the cold light of day. And I know that people in the YouTube comments are going to do that, because this will come out a day and a half after the game, and they'll have some issues with the team, and a lot of those issues are valid. But I think we just need to take a back step and let's look at the whole picture rather than one game in isolation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know for me, I posted at the end of the game, that got met with thank you to everyone who backed that as well and wrote nice things to me. And then I got a lot of messages saying that's rubbish and, the last 2 months means nothing and all that sort of stuff. And once again, like we've just pointed out, I understand the emotional reaction. I switched it off. I went to sleep. I woke up. And I think all of us after a sleep probably feel a little bit better about yesterday. Doesn't mean it's acceptable, and we're going to get into that as well. But the initial emotional reaction is something that some people can control better than others. So, look, let's dive into this. Like, did you think we were still capable of this for the rest of the year? Because for me, I always thought that we're never going to not get smashed again. Progression isn't linear, and you're not just going to get a little bit better and just goes like up and up and up and up. There's going to be ups and downs and ups and downs. And I, in no way, shape or form, think that loss, what happened yesterday, takes away anything that we've done over the last 2 months. I still back the team to be able to come back and keep those results close enough and put it down to a dog day. Do you feel similar to that? How are you taking that, and did you think there will be more smashings for the rest of the year?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you've got the lack of experience and I guess talent, a little bit of its talent in the back half particularly, you're always going to get situations where teams can get on top of you. And Hawthorn was just the perfect. I think Hawthorn was the perfect storm for what happened on the weekend. Adam Simpson does a lot in the media now. He's obviously sort of mutually parted ways with West Coast last year, and he talks about pattern versus event. And what he means by that is this a pattern of behaviour with the team, or is it an event? Is it just one out of the box? And if we look at the whole year, I would say that we've had 2 pretty bad games, but then the Adelaide game and the Sydney game. But the rest of them have actually been not too bad with some wins. So these type of smashings, I think, are an event rather than a pattern if you look at the season in its entirety. And so as an up-and-coming team, I fully expect us to get belted every now and again. Now, here's the thing. People, when I say stuff like that, or when, Josh, you say things like that, people think that that's us just accepting mediocrity. It's not. Because if we were accepting it, we'd just be like, oh, no, it was a good effort. We had some positives here and there. It was really, really great. It's not. It's very much unacceptable. Like,
yep.
I think the performance overall was really, really poor. But you've got to look at it in the context of the entire season. And when you look at it in that way, it does mitigate the severity of the loss a little bit. And you've talked about it many, many times. I think you said that you didn't think that we had too many smashings left in us, given how confident we were with the back line. But I actually think this had less to do with the back line and more to do with the entire team just playing really, really, really badly. Really badly.
Yeah, no. I completely agree. And I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. You're right. It's more of a, more of an event in our season than the trajectory and where we're going. The trend here is we have been really competitive for majority of the season this year. Even before the Carlton and that Sydney game, we were keeping games close. We had that Demons game, and what I don't like is when people say that's the moment we turned the corner. That's it there. Because the Demons game was the moment we turned the corner, and then the Blues game was the moment we turned the corner, and then there was other ones in other years. There's no such thing as that is the moment that it turned. And this is what I said before about it not being linear. It's not going to just be now we don't get smashed, so we're never going to get it again. We're a young team. We're still not a good AFL team. We will be, and we've shown that we can do that. But it's not linear. And I think that was a perfect way to sum it up. It's not accepting mediocrity at all, because I hate the way we played yesterday. And when we get into that, we can share more thoughts on the game. But and that's what I feel like maybe we get met with a lot, like being on the internet and doing AFL sort of content, is just because, I posted something saying we need to move on from this. This is an isolated event. A lot of the backlash was like, well, I'm accepting mediocrity. And absolutely not. I love this team just as much as anybody else does. Fronting up every week like we do to talk about this sort of stuff, I think epitomizes that. So look, 100% agree with what you said. It's not accepting mediocrity at all, but it doesn't mean that whatever happened in the last week is what the club is. It's the whole season. And when we get to that, we've already got more wins than last year. We've competed more than we ever have in the last 5 years this season. This is an isolated event, and now we need to look at over the next 2-3 games to get back to what we've been doing. And I believe we will. And I also think, one, I understand that we've been through a lot as a fan base, so we can be a bit reactionary. But two, what this team has done in the last 2 months deserves our respect and deserves our patience, because they've shown that they are improving, they care, and they can do it, and they will do it as time goes on. And we can't be the fan base, and I don't want to be that sort of fan base that is overly emotional and reactionary when our team probably deserves a little bit more of our respect and attention. I look at a team like Hawthorn, and I know a lot of Hawthorn fans as well, and when the Hawks lost those 3 or 4 games in a row, the fan base instantly went, well, we're just rubbish now. We suck. We're the worst. And you're like, your team went from the bottom of the ladder to into the finals and played really good first half of the year, and you're already ready to jump off. They've probably earned a little bit more of your time. Just like Richmond. Richmond won 3 flags, and a lot of their fans that I talk to now are like, I haven't been watching this year. And that's crazy to me, because those 3 flags should earn your attention for years and years and years to come. If I see 1 flag in my lifetime, mate, that I'm going to be so happy. And it's like, this team has earned our trust and respect a little bit to a degree. And we shouldn't be that fan base to just throw the baby out with the bathwater, the toys out of the pram, whatever analogy you want to use. And that's what I feel like maybe we did a little bit too much last night. But like I said, we've all had a sleep. Hopefully we're all feeling a little bit more level-headed, and this podcast can help level it out a little bit, because I feel like that's why we're here.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. We'll look at the game and look at where we went wrong. I think it's pretty obvious, but and then we'll also sort of look at some small positives, and also look ahead, like what's to come.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, let's dive into the game. Will Dawson playing his first game for the season. Were you excited to see him in the lineup?
Yeah, I was. I also can kind of accept that sort of it's not going to be our backline at its absolute best with Will down there. Not because Will's not a good player, but because Will's very early in his career. And, I mean, he's only 19 years old. He's playing a key positions post. He's been doing really well in the VFL, and he kind of deserved it, I think, to come in next man up. And I think he definitely wasn't our worst. So I think we have to give him his flowers there. But I obviously disappointed to not see Chom there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess we'll see with Chom over the next couple of weeks. I'd like to get an update or a bit of a timeline into when he would possibly be back, because if it is more than a couple of weeks, I think that's some pretty concerning. Maybe is an overreaction, but I'd like to ask some questions of like the medical team there, letting him play with after a week of healing with a fractured shoulder blade, and then clearly looks like his arm was about to fall off, but the week before. But anyway, look, it's not a podcast about that, so. Yeah, I was excited for Will Dawson. I was interested to see which end of the ground he'd play. I think it was obviously, the Charlie Comben replacement, but he's been playing so much forward in the VFL. Are we going to go to a bigger forward line? We really went the opposite of what they can do. And I spoke about this with Danny, the guest we got on for the preview podcast, where Hawthorn are such a small, quick, fast, handball moving team compared to, I think we're more slower, bigger, and physical. We did go in with three key defenders for a team that has Mabior Chol, and Gunston's more of that like tall to medium-esque, but he's not your traditional tall sort of forward, and with a lot of small, buzzy forwards. And I think this is why I've always earmarked, I tried to earmark this game as a little bit of a disaster game. And I know I only tipped us, I was hoping 3 to 4 goals. Obviously that wasn't the case, but we sort of went in very opposite to how we could nullify their strengths, I think. And you could tell from the way the first 2 goals went in, I knew that this was going to be a little bit of a tough day. I posted a status not very long after that going, we might be in for one here. And not because that was me overreacting, because I watch this team every week like so many of us do. And when you're missing 2 spoil attempts, missed both of them, the confidence is low and the flood is coming into our back line. I don't think you can, once the Hawks have momentum in a game, and like we saw last year, it's very, very hard to stop what they can do.
Yeah, it is for sure. Like, we didn't start very well. We missed some pretty rudimentary spoils. We missed a lot of tackles, early doors. We really played the entire game in their half, which is really not what you want to do. Our game style, and if you look at the way that we played against Carlton in those second and third quarters, we played the majority of the game in our half, relied on pressure to prevent them from exiting very well, turn the ball over and then go straight back over their head. That was the game plan, and that's what you have to do against Hawthorn. You have to keep the ball in your forward half so that they can't explode fast from turnover, and we weren't able to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I've never seen so many players slip over, missing tackles as well, gettable tackles as well. Clarko sort of spoke in his press conference, and not that we want to use it as an excuse, but I don't think it's something to just throw away. We've played some pretty intense football, and we've travelled a lot over the last 4 to 6 weeks. And I think it felt like a little bit of amalgamation of this team looks a bit tired and this team looks a little bit gassed. And you can see with the intensity we brought last week compared to this week. I mean, we started trying to with little spot fires before the first bounce and that sort of stuff. But as soon as that ball was bounced, we couldn't lay a glove on them at all. We couldn't lay tackles. And like I said before, I've never seen, and Clarko pointed this out as well, I've never seen a team fall over so much when one team seems to be able to keep its feet and the other just continues to fall over. So, yeah, it didn't start very well. And look, it just sort of went downhill from there. It was very, very hard to watch. There are a few individual performances which we can sort of point out and talk about. But from an overall game perspective, how did you see this sort of play out as it went? It just felt like to me that the first quarter established what this game was going to be, and then that just repeated for 4 quarters for me.
Yeah, pretty much. We were just getting absolutely smashed around the football. Basically, that's what it comes down to. And when your game and our game is predicated on contested football and winning clearance, and you don't do that, you're in a lot of trouble, because there's the plan B is at the moment is not there. Like, that extra layer of game plan is not there at the moment, which is we don't have the ability or as good an ability to score from our back half and rebound it. We were the number for the last 8 weeks, we're the number 1 clearance team in the comp. 5th for scoring from clearance, and that was evidenced in that month where we were playing a lot better. But when you get beaten in that area, when it's our one wood, we're absolutely cooked. We're done, because we can't protect our backline. And as we know, our backline is probably our weakest area of the ground. And when the ball's coming in like it is, it's impossible. Their efficiency, their scoring efficiency inside 50 was so incredibly good because the ball was coming in with very little pressure, shoulders out, and they will be able to hit targets. It was just very simple. And look, I'm just going to go through some really quick numbers for you, Josh. And I don't want to get caught up on the numbers, but I know that the people out there don't mind this stuff. So 63 to 40 inside 50s, complete smashing. Anytime you're over 60 inside 50s, you almost always win the game. Clearances 44 to 30. That's bad. Mm-hmm. For a team that wins the clearance count 2 out of 3 weeks, that's really, really bad. And contested possessions 135 to 110. It's just a smashing around the football, and our midfielders just didn't look up for it. They look flat. They look disinterested. Disinterest is maybe a bit harsh. We didn't tackle very well. Yeah, it was basically as bad as it could get, mate.
Yeah. I'm looking at some of the quick numbers here. I was actually going to bring up some of those quickly. I look at our efficiency inside the 50 as well, and ours was over 50%, 55% for our efficiency inside 50 on 40%. So, I mean, that's not even that's arguably a career. I haven't looked at it, but it feels like it's almost a high for us for the season, which just shows how much Hawthorn dominated the other way because. Still scoring in the modern AFL era. I mean, obviously letting up 150 is pathetic, but 65 points in a game like that, we couldn't not score at all. You know what I mean? It was just our offensive effort when we had the ball was there. It's just we didn't get the ball ever, and the weight of just how you look at all the key indicators here, even disposals, kicks, handballs, inside 50s. Hit outs, clearance, like everything is Hawthorn. They dominated the only stat we won, I think, was like 1%ers or something like that. And that's probably because we didn't have the ball at all. So, it was a complete and utter, show of just no intent and look, no effort. Like you pointed out, just said, no effort is very, very harsh. And, that's a very natural reaction that we have is like they didn't care that day. Well, they absolutely cared. They went there wanting to win, but Hawthorn just dismantled everything that we wanted to try and do. I mean, you can look at like a coaching effort from Mitchell as well, and Clarkson's never been able to get the wood over him. And maybe one day, and look, that's a lot to where the list is at. I think that's less about Clarkson. I still back what that guy is doing, and we move forward. But on the day, it was just every single facet of the game we got beaten. And you've sort of got to chalk that up. But it's almost like Hawthorn lost a game last year to Port Adelaide by like nearly 100 points when they were playing some good football. And then they were just then that was one where it was Sydney. I think it was Sydney, Port Adelaide. And yeah,
Sydney, Port Adelaide, Adelaide Oval. They lost by 112 points.
And that, but they were playing so well through that season. I chalked that one up to that's just one of those days, and that's just one of those games where it doesn't make any sense, and we need to move on from that. And obviously, form was different the next week, but I'm sort of trying to feel I'm feeling like that a little bit from this game as well, where I do trust and back what we've done in the last couple of months because we did it consistently, and even like I said before the Good Friday game and the Sydney game, I think we sort of did similar things. We just weren't accustomed to it yet. And this is an outlier, and like you said, this is a one-off performance. This is a show and a spectacle, not the norm. So that's what I'm gonna sort of chalk this one up to. I think there was a few players that played pretty good games here for us as well. I mean, the first one I'll try and point out, and we'll just go sporadically through these. I don't think we need to talk about defence, midfield, and forward as much as we'll just point out some of the individual efforts. I mean, Luke Davies-Uniacke I think played decent in this one. He was probably one of the ones that I thought was really trying to will us over the line and had some efforts that I think were really, really good. I mean, he's ended up with 28 disposals for the game and 530 metres gained. I think that was one of our highest for the day. 10 clearances for him, and him especially doing that after copping a complete gut punch right on the first bounce as well, which I'm sure won't be looked at for some reason. I think he did his part yesterday, and we can we can say he tried his heart out and he definitely tried to drag the team forward, which is he's had come under a lot of criticism criticism. And I know we're not going to praise players for the effort yesterday overall, but that's the sort of stuff you want to see your big signing or the guy with the big contract trying to do when these losses occur, I guess.
Yeah, when the whips were cracking, he was getting in there and he was trying to lift us a little bit, and he actually was relatively good. Obviously, he had a few moments, but I'm actually happy to see him just with his consistency of performance. That's what it takes. Even in a team that's getting flogged, he's still consistently performing. The soon to be $1 million man, Josh. You've pointed out many times that he's not yet on $1 million. We don't know that. He may well be, but yes, he well done to him just to stay with it, because it would be frustrating in there at the moment when you're getting smashed as well, like we were.
Yeah, and he did a lot of work in the contest around the game, and I just think, it's definitely a performance I think we need to point out. And look, not good enough on the day. You had 28 CBAs for him on the day, 10 clearances, 12 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, set up Larky, classic LDU stuff, sort of getting it, bounding out of the pack, and then hit Larky, over the top of the defender out the back. So, that was good stuff for him. Just want to shout him out. I want to shout out McColby as well, 34 touches, and did everything he possibly could to try and drive this team forward down in his home, down in Launceston as well. So, shout out to Colby McKercher, 82% disposal efficiency, 34 touches, and just did everything he could to possibly drive this team forward as well. 4 intercepts for him as well. So, and I think he had a few score involvements. Let me just double check this here. He said 5 score involvements for the game. And on a game where, we didn't really do much in the forward half, I think he really tried his heart out as well to try and, do something for this team and give us some run and some transition.
Yeah, and I mean, his form's been fantastic over the last 6 weeks. He's really turned it on, particularly since the West Coast game. He's been excellent for us. He's really shown what he can become, that Errol Goulden, fast halfback wing player. He's playing really, really well, and it was good to see him play well again in a team that's really struggling. To be fair, a lot of ball down there in the back line for him to use. You know what the other thing is, Josh? I think they're using McKercher a lot more through handball receives. It'd be really interesting to see what his handball receives were yesterday, because he'd had a lot of them. And that's fine as well, because it's better to get the ball in his hands than someone else.
Yeah, totally.
Some of the other kickers.
Yeah, they're really finding his role and have found his role. I think that halfback wing sort of thing. And you're right, you're totally right. He'll run around the back of. If Jerry did a little bit more around the ground yesterday for me, which is something that I would like to see a little bit more from him, taking some marks up the ground and just being an option down the line. He took a couple of marks and instantly looks for Colby, and you'll find Colby sort of darts one way, cuts back and runs around the player to receive the handball, and I don't want him taking a mark and standing still. I want him receiving the ball when he's running, because that's one of the things that's going to push us forward. So was there anyone else? I've got a couple more to chat about, but is there anyone else that stood out for you that you wanted to point out? And then we can maybe point out some of the guys that didn't show up.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Larky played really well. 5'3". He actually left a few on the table, to be honest. I think he left he's kicked 5'3" and probably not scored with another one, but I think he could have kicked 7 quite comfortably. Yeah. There were, and to look, I don't want to lump it all on him. There were a lot of gilt-edged opportunities that, if we kick one or two at different points, we're able to halt their momentum a little bit more effectively. But to be done by 85 points and still kick 5 is a great effort. What I will say is we play better when Larky kicks less goals. Clearly.
It does seem that way. And I think that's a case of, us scoring from stoppage so much and Curtis and Zerha being so good. I mean, look, Larky kicking slightly more goals would be nice, but I think what we did with him last week against Carlton, where he pushed up more, created the contest, created the marking opportunity, and sort of trying to isolate Zerha and Curtis, is a very dangerous weapon for us. But then when games do get bogged down like that, then at least we can go back to him. If he can find a middle ground between those two. I mean, look, that game just stunk of 2023, Nick Larky, where, we're getting smashed, but he's just grinding us over the line, trying to do any, not over the line, but you know what I mean, trying to grind out anything he possibly can for the game. So, yeah, look, it's a balance to find, and I think we do find it. I'm not questioning Larky at all. I think he's a smart and selfless enough guy to be able to do the right things. But yeah, great performance from him, and hopefully he can get some confidence from that. The team can learn how, or watch some vision on how they found him. And, if we do need that Larky option, or we can isolate Curtis and Zerha, I think that's something to learn to manage through the game. And that comes with coaching, that comes with time, and that comes with development as well. I've pointed this out so much on the pod, but Clarko last year in the best and fairest said, we finally have a team or a list we can build a game plan around. And that's not going to come together in a year. That's going to be over the next 2-3 seasons. We're going to really start to nail what we're doing. And that's when we get more consistency. And hopefully that's when we stop letting this stuff happen. So, Luke Parker is another one that battled all day. 703 meters gained by Luke Parker. And I will say he's fallen into like a little bit of the North Melbourne brain of hack that ball forward without looking. The only slight criticism I would put on him, even in the last month or so, where I think I want him to come in and be a little bit of a better ball user. I know he's not always been the greatest ball user ever, but a little bit more leadership to make the right decision. But, you can't question all the toughness that he has sort of shown. 29 touches, 6 clearances, 703 meters gained, and just had his head over everything. So that's another good performance. Do you want to point out anyone else that was on your mind, or we're going to go to some negatives?
I just wanted to go into Will Dawson just to touch. Yep. I mean, this is his first game for the year. Kind of been playing forward, playing back in the VFL, comes in for Comben, obviously, as a key back. And look, he's only 19 still. He turns 20 on New Year's Eve this year.
Which is crazy to think he's younger than Sheasel and like Wardlaw and stuff as well.
Exactly, because he's such a big unit. And I actually think yesterday made me gave me more of an insight into how good he could be. Because I think even though we got smashed and they, Charles kicked 5, Gunston's kicked 7, Ramsden's kicked 3. So the tall forwards, even though they're less heralded, did get hold of us a little bit. I still think he had his moments. Took a few intercept marks. He tried to physically impose himself on the game, wasn't afraid to get involved. So I think it's good that one certain positive is to get games into him, and to let him get a taste of AFL again. Whitlock played that game against Sydney, which is a bit of a nightmare for all of us involved. But I'm really looking forward to that day when Whitlock and Warson play in the same team. It's going to be super exciting for our fan base.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another thing I've sort of touched on previously in separate pods is, we over the next couple of years, we need both of those guys being in our best 23 because Darlings and Cores and things like that. And look, Toby Pink has been fantastic and it was a dog day for him. But, will he still be, playing to the level he has been playing? We need those 200 centimetre key pillars at each end of the ground. I'm a bit worried that one of them won't be forward. And, I don't know which one of them got to go forward. I don't think we can fit both of them down the back line with Logue being there, I guess, who is questionable. But, are we going to have those 2 tall pillars down there in Charlie Comben? That's 3 200-centimetre guys. I don't think that's going to be the case in the modern AFL with how it's going with the smalls. So one of them needs to play forward, one of them needs to play back. And I hope please put Whitlock in the forward line. Just that's, and I hope it's a development year for him getting around the football and then they move him forward because Dawson, I think he started really poorly, Dawson, and I don't want to pick on him too much because he's so young and it's his first game of the season, but he started pretty atrociously for me in the first quarter, and I think it was a good bounce back from him to get himself back in the game and not lose his head or not let the moment, take over for him. Like you said, coming back with some intercept marks and physically tried to impose himself in the game from where he was in the first quarter. It looks like he got bullied a little bit, but first quarter of AFL football for the year. So, that's a pass, I think. And I hope he plays next week. Even if Chom's available, I'd probably rather, maybe swap out a Logue or something like that for him because the Bulldogs are tall as well. The Bulldogs are very, very tall. So maybe we can do something with that. Anyone you want to point out maybe on the negative side? We'll do a couple of these. We won't harper on this too long, and then we can finish up the pod.
Yeah, I think, look, I'm obviously as big a Jerry fan as there is. I'm a massive fan of his. I think he's been
We all are.
fantastic this year. Last week was a bit rough because he definitely beat TDK, but he was probably even against Pitternet. So it's probably like just a net positive just. This week, I think he was probably, if not even, maybe just slightly lost to Meek, to be honest. Meek had more hitouts and more tackles. Sherry had a few more touches. I think these are the ruckmen that Sherry probably doesn't do as well against. These kind of really kind of quite hardcore bash and crash type ruckmen.
Just like up against Cameron.
Yeah, or guys that he does well against are guys like Tim English or guys like Max Gawn, who are who have a little bit, they're a little bit more ball players. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing to see him lower his colours to Meek because if this game, and look, again, I don't want to have a go at Tristan because he's been so good this year, but we really needed first use yesterday.
Yeah.
Desperately.
Yeah,
and how our whole game plan was predicated on that. And then we really, for us to be competitive, he needed to beat Meek quite soundly, and he wasn't able to do that, unfortunately.
This is why we also need that forward ruck combination to sort of be able to come into our team. Even if it's a back ruck combination, I don't think it matters too much. I mean, like a Rory Lobb, potentially, and then we can go to 2 keys instead of maybe 3 for a little bit of the game, like just something to chop Sherry out a little bit because he's bashing and crashing all day. And if we can get maybe slightly better rotation, I think that would help us out because like you pointed out, our game plan is so reliant on first use and score from stoppage at this stage, if that is where we're trying to trend towards. So, I think that would help a lot. And can a Dawson or a Whitlock, if they come in, or a lot of chat about CCJ coming up with how good he's playing in the VFL and was an emergency for this game, which is something we really wouldn't have ever thought. But hey, here we are. CCJ as an archetype of player is exactly what this team is missing. And I'm not saying he's going to be it. I know I was on the CCJ train a couple of years ago, but that archetype of player is one of the biggest holes in this team, I think. And Darling's doing the best he can, and but he's aging and he's not that tall and he's not going to be a proper chop out ruckman. So look, another player for me, a couple of players I might point out in a bunch here is Toby Pink and Riley Hardiman. I mean, look, the Toby Pink love was through the roof, and I got to chat to him, and it still once again does not take away from all the great stuff that guy has done this year in our backline. Once again, like not a droppable performance at all, but well, maybe as an individual, he's got the tickets now to sort of stay on the train, but. He letting Gunston kick that many goals, missing spoils, positionally was out of place a lot in that game. Was the hype because he knew about the hype. He sees everything that was going on. That's something we talked about, and I wonder if it just put a little bit of pressure on him. I got a feeling that he's the sort of person that I'll be interested to see how he deals with that sort of pressure, or maybe it is a little bit like, wow, the AFL's posting about him, all the media's doing stories on him now, and that would be a lot of pressure for him as well. So I'll trust him to come back and have a bounce back performance next week because he's been so good for us this year, but definitely got comprehensively beaten on the weekend. And Riley Hardiman got 5 touches for the game, and he's been such an instrumental part of driving us off half back while keeping our defensive integrity. And just over a touch a quarter for a game from a player that's very important for our team and has been. That's one that, once again, I don't want him dropped from this team or anything. I'm just merely pointing out that we really missed what he has added to our team over the last couple of months.
For sure. We'll start with Pink. I think he's symptomatic of what's going on in the team. Like, if the ball comes in the way it does, I've said this many times, you could have Steve Silvani down there on Jack Gunston and he would have kicked as many goals. Like, it's very difficult to stop him at times. He's so wily. He got a couple of goals out the back. He knows exactly when to push his man into the contest. And they're all things that it would take time for Pink to work out. Also, let's be honest, he's not the ideal Pink matchup. Pink would prefer a slightly bigger, less mobile player than Gunston. Gunston's a bit that sort of he's 6'4", but he's also he's like a flanker. He's not really a traditional tall forward. So I didn't think it was really the matchup. I actually thought you'd probably be better off with McDonald on Gunston in reflection. But yeah, look, you're exactly right. He's got the credits in the bank, has Pink over the last few weeks. And I think that I think we should write this off as just a really, really bad performance for the entire team. And as Hardiman goes, same with him. We always forget that he's a 20-year-old player who is in his second year of football, and he's still finding his way in AFL. And if you're going to get lit up by any team in the AFL being a halfback flanker who's kind of like a running halfback flanker who also locks down, it's going to be the Hawks because of their fleet of really fast, fit, skillful small forwards. Watson, Ginnivan, Moore, McDonald, like there's a bunch of them in there that just run through, and it's so hard to keep up with them, especially when the ball was coming in the way it was. So again, happy to give him a little bit of a mulligan for that one, but obviously they'll go to work. I think a very, very important part about all this is these guys will go to work now during the week and go, okay, where did we go wrong? Let's use this as a learning tool to go, okay, where did we go wrong? What could I have done here? Generally, what were my problems? Also, they'll use this for intel next time they play Hawthorn. Okay, what works against Gunston? What doesn't work? What works against Watson? What doesn't work? It's all part of a learning phase for this team.
Yeah, for sure. So, look, we'll leave some player appraisal there. There was a couple more, but look, it's not worth really talking about. We might finish it up sort of here just so this isn't too long for people. But I think, like you pointed out, this is all a learning curve for us. Try not to lose your heads after one game, even though I do know it's very hard when it gets emotional at the times. But people posting up lists of ins and outs, before the final siren goes is just ridiculous. And, we need to people screaming at certain players after praising them the weeks before and that sort of stuff. It's just crazy. So we need to settle down a little bit. We're a better fan base than that. We've got the best fans in the league, as we know, the most loyal, and we stick by everyone. So, let's try and live those things a little bit. Let's look at it when we get to the end of the season. We've already won more games than last year. We've got the D's coming out. We've got the Saints. We've got Richmond. And if we're finishing on 7.5, and I'll nearly count that Brisbane draw as a win, and roughly 7.5, 8 wins for the year, and we lose other games but keep them competitive, to me, that is a massive, massive success of an AFL season compared to what we've been doing the last 2 or 3 years. And, there's not really any reason to not think like that. Anyone who doesn't feel that way, I'd love to talk to them about why their mentality isn't positive about that. But, hey, that's more of a conversation for the rest of the year. So, look, thank you, Chief, for coming on. Do you want to wrap it up at all with your final thoughts?
I'll just say, event, not a pattern. Let's just move on. It's going to be a short week. We're going to the centenary celebrations on Thursday night. Don't get me started on why we did a centenary celebration on a Thursday night when it's way harder to get to the football. But I think everybody should be excited. There's 100 years of this football club being in the VFL / AFL, and I think that's a really, really important thing. We are an integral part of this comp, even though people are always bagging us about we should move to Tassie, we should move to Gold Coast, a welfare club, whatever it is. We are an integral member of this competition, and we should never forget that. We've got a rich history of players, of superstars, of involvement in the league, 75, 77, 96, 99. They're very, very big years. So people shouldn't forget that, and they should celebrate that on Thursday night.
Yeah, a lot of innovation for the league as well with Friday night football and, just progression in the game, even in the women's game and stuff like that. It's very, very important. So, no, we do a lot for the league, even though we don't do a lot of winning, but that winning will come. And hopefully everyone can get down on Thursday night. I know it's not ideal. I'm going to get home probably about midnight after that game and have to go to a 10-hour shift at a barber shop the next day. So we'll see how we go. But, we're not going to, unless they invent something, we're probably not all going to be alive for the next one. So, look, this will be a night that's like once every 100 years for North Melbourne. Get to it. We get down to Bay 29 has tickets available through Close to a Flag as well. I've got my tickets in Bay 29. A couple of the admins will be in there as well. And I'm bringing a mate down who's not a North fan, but he goddamn will be for the night. So everyone get down to 29. We'll do some Toby Pink chants, have a fun time, soak up the history and all that sort of stuff, and hopefully do a little bit better against the Bulldogs. But we'll chat to you soon, Chief. Hopefully next time you're on, it's after a win. We'll get you for a win before the end of the year, mate, all right? I'll cancel some plans last minute and say, no, this man has to come on after a win.
We've got 3 more opportunities as I see it, so fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, we've got more opportunities than games we won last year, or the same amount, so, to up to this point. So that's not a bad thing. We're getting there, guys. Stay strong, relax. Everything's fine. We'll be fine. All right, we'll chat to you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.